All right, let's just jump right into this. I'm willing to bet that most of you open your pantry every single day, grab a little bottle of spice, and just shake it over your dinner without a second thought. You think you're just adding a little flavor to your chicken, right? Well, it's actually kind of amusing how little we know about what's sitting right there in our own kitchens. Because what you're really holding in your hand is the physical evidence of an epic 500-year-old rebel uprising. That's right. Hiding right there on your spice rack is the ultimate tax-dodging, empire-crushing rebel. So today, we're going to look at exactly how a literal bootleg fruit managed to completely outsmart a global superpower. So, I want you to genuinely take a guess here. Think about which of your entirely ordinary, honestly kind of boring, modern pantry items were once considered ultra-taxed luxury goods. Go ahead, take a wild guess. It's funny because we treat this stuff like it's absolutely nothing today. We literally give it away in tiny paper packets at diners. But back in the day, these were the exclusive, hoarded treasures of the absolute elite. Trust me, if you weren't royalty or some ridiculously wealthy merchant, you weren't even allowed in the same room as this stuff. To really get this, you have to understand the incredibly bleak stakes we're talking about. Welcome to what we look back on as the 1500s Bland Age. And let me tell you, it was a grim, grim time to be eating. Imagine every single meal you eat, every single day, tasting literally like wet cardboard. Because of massive global shortages, that was the harsh reality for the average commoner. See, the Turkish Empire had managed to secure absolute total control over the Eastern spice trade, and their extreme taxes meant that flavor itself was something only the 1% of the 1% ever got to experience. They essentially had a total chokehold on what was considered black gold. Things that you mindlessly throw into your grocery cart today without even checking the price, like black pepper, cinnamon, cloves, were subjected to massive, exorbitant taxes. The monopoly was so tight and the prices were so artificially inflated that imported spices were exclusively reserved for the ultra-wealthy. Flavor was the ultimate status symbol. And frankly, the commoners, they were entirely priced out of actually enjoying their own food.
Now, by the 1500s, people were desperate to escape this cardboard reality. So you have these, well, kind of noodle-armed, bewildered explorers stumbling around like puppets, finally reaching the Americas. And what do they find growing in the dirt? This weird-tasting exotic fruit. They had absolutely no idea what it was, or even what to do with it, but they went ahead and loaded this strange red plant onto their ships and hauled it all the way across the ocean back to Europe anyway.
And what's truly fascinating about this era is just the sheer ignorance of it all. I mean, we call it a pepper, right? Well, that is a massive historical linguistic glitch. It's almost laughable. Those clueless 16th century explorers tasted this American Cayenne chili. It violently burned their mouths, and they just shrugged and mislabeled it as a true peppercorn. They literally just called it a pepper because it shared a similar intense heat profile to the incredibly expensive black pepper they knew from the East. Biologically speaking, they are a completely unrelated species, but the name stuck for half a millennium just because some explorer couldn't handle the heat. The absurdity of the whole situation really hits you when you compare the two. On one side, you have the elite's imported black pepper. It is astronomically expensive, relies on agonizingly slow Eastern trade routes, actually carries a relatively mild heat, and is totally monopolized by the Turkish Empire. On the flip side, backyard Cayenne, the so-called poor man's pepper. It is 100% free, an entirely untaxed bootleg, packs an intensely fiery heat, and it grows so incredibly fast that it immediately became a staple for the peasants.
Which brings me to a question for you. And honestly, I want you to really think about this survival tactic for a second. If your absolute favorite spice was suddenly taxed at 500% by a massive empire, what would you do? Would you just submit, give up flavor entirely, and go back to those cardboard dinners? Or would you grow a completely bootleg version right in your own garden to cheat the system? For the working class of the 1500s, the choice was pretty obvious. They chose rebellion.
Exactly how they pulled off this massive historical tax evasion comes down to what we can call the growth glitch. Cayenne's biological hack was its extreme growing speed. Unlike those Eastern peppercorns, which took forever to cultivate and transport, these American chilies grew so fast that peasants could saturate their local markets practically overnight. This growth glitch allowed the working class to completely bypass those slow, heavily taxed trade routes. It was instant flavor, provided totally for free, just popping up everywhere.
But here's the thing. This mattered so much more beyond just making food taste good. Cayenne is essentially a biological energy bank for a compound called capsaicin. When you eat it, that capsaicin acts directly on your human pain receptors. Your body panics for a second, and then it triggers a massive endorphin rush. For a peasant just trying to survive the grim, daily grind of the Bland Age, this wasn't just a flavor enhancer, it was a literal natural mood booster. Plus, before refrigeration was a thing, people were desperate, and it was widely believed that this intense heat acted as a preservative to keep their meat from spoiling. So yeah, it was an absolute lifesaver.
Now, this biological hack created one of the most hilarious shifts in social dynamics in human history. Suddenly, out of nowhere, you have the peasant feast, rich, vibrant flavor, a capsaicin-induced natural high, all for literally zero cost. Meanwhile, look at the elite palace. They're still eating relatively mild, cardboard-flavored food, paying exorbitant taxes to the Turkish Empire for the privilege, and basically looking out their windows with profound, seething jealousy. The wealthy elite suddenly realized that the poor were eating infinitely better than they were.
So, what do you think happens when the rich realize they're the ones missing out? We get this incredible 4-step paradigm shift. Step 1. The wealthy elites simply can't handle being outflavored by the working class, so they finally admit defeat. Step 2. The palaces actually start funding and sending their own explorers specifically to find and claim more varieties of these American chilies. Step 3. This completely untaxed peasant spice officially goes mainstream and conquers the palace kitchens. And finally, Step 4, the ultimate victory. Because absolutely everyone is now using the bootleg fruit, the Turkish Empire's precious spice monopoly completely shatters forever.
The sheer, undeniable scale of the aftermath here is staggering. This one massive act of working-class spice tax evasion directly led to global culinary shifts that we still taste today. Indian curries were permanently transformed by the introduction of the chili. Entire American hot sauce traditions were born right out of this movement. The invincible Turkish monopoly was completely dismantled. What started as a weird-tasting fruit used as a cheap substitute for the poor actually established the very foundation of everyday modern international food. You literally cannot separate modern cuisine from this historic rebellion.
So a fruit that humans use to cheat on their taxes is now the reason your dinner actually tastes good? Now that's absolutely wild.